Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever feel like your brain just won't switch gears when you need it to? Or maybe you really struggle to manage your emotions? Well, this new study dives into how these everyday thinking skills are linked to mental health challenges, especially for autistic adults who might need a bit more support in their lives. It is a fascinating look into how our brains help us navigate the world and how that connection can sometimes lead to struggles with anxiety and depression. So, what are we talking about when we say executive function, or EF for short? Think of it as your brain's management system. It includes skills like planning, staying focused, controlling your impulses, and adapting to changes. These are super important for just about everything we do, from getting ready in the morning to holding down a job. Now, we know that many autistic individuals experience challenges with these executive functions, but most of the research has focused on children or on autistic adults who might not have intellectual disabilities. This leaves a big gap in our understanding when it comes to autistic adults who need higher levels of support, which often includes those with intellectual disabilities. And that's exactly what this study wanted to explore. The researchers wanted to see if there was a link between three specific executive function skills: flexibility, our ability to manage emotions, and inhibitory control, which is like holding back an impulse, and how anxious or depressed autistic adults with higher support needs felt. They looked at data from almost 500 autistic adults, all aged 18 and older, who were part of a large research project called SPARK. Since directly asking adults with intellectual disabilities about their executive functions and mental health can be tricky sometimes, they relied on people who know them best, their caregivers, like parents or siblings. These caregivers filled out detailed questionnaires about the autistic adults' everyday skills, their ability to handle change, manage their feelings, and control their impulses. They also answered questions about anxiety and depression symptoms. They specifically looked at three executive function areas. First, emotion regulation, which is all about how well someone can manage their feelings and reactions. Then there is flexibility, the ability to switch gears, adapt to new situations, and think about things in different ways. And finally, inhibitory control, the skill of stopping oneself from doing something immediately or suppressing unwanted thoughts or actions. For mental health, they used a scale designed to capture symptoms of anxiety and depression. Again, based on caregiver reports, they wanted to see if problems with any of these executive functions were associated with higher levels of anxiety or depression. Now, for the science part, but let's keep it simple. They used a statistical method called a hierarchical linear regression. Basically, they looked at whether executive function skills predicted mental health after accounting for other factors like age, sex assigned at birth, and whether the person had a likely cognitive impairment. Think of it like this. First, they checked if age or sex made a difference, and then they asked, okay, now that we know about age and sex, do these executive function skills still add to our understanding of anxiety and depression? Let's get to what they found. For depression symptoms, the initial factors like age and sex did make a small difference. But when they added in the executive function skills, this is the really interesting part. They found that when they looked at the executive function skills, having more difficulty with flexibility and emotion regulation was linked to higher symptoms of depression. But here is a key point: flexibility and emotion regulation showed a strong connection to depression symptoms. But difficulties with inhibitory control did not show a significant link to depression in this group. And it was a similar story for anxiety when they looked at anxiety symptoms. Again, greater challenges with flexibility and emotion regulation were significantly linked to higher levels of anxiety. And again, inhibitory control didn't show a significant connection to anxiety in this specific group. And importantly, they double-checked this by only looking at the subgroup with likely cognitive impairment. And the findings held up. So, these links between flexibility, emotion regulation, and mental health in autistic adults with higher support needs seem pretty solid. So, what does this all mean? The big takeaway is that for autistic adults who need higher levels of support, struggling with how to manage their emotions and how to adapt to change seems strongly connected to their experiences of anxiety and depression. It's like if you find it really hard to bounce back when things change or to calm yourself down. When you're upset, you're more likely to experience anxiety and depression. The fact that inhibitory control wasn't linked in this study is also interesting. It suggests that while controlling impulses is an important executive function, it might not be the main driver of anxiety and depression in this particular group of autistic adults. Maybe its biggest impact is earlier in life, or maybe its role is more about outwardly expressing difficult emotions, rather than the internal experience of them. This is the first study of its kind to look at these real-world executive function skills and mental health in autistic adults with higher support needs. It is a crucial step because this group is often left out of research, but they have a high rate of mental health challenges. What does this mean for potential help or interventions? The findings strongly suggest that focusing on building skills in flexibility and emotion regulation could be key. Imagine teaching strategies to cope with change, to understand and manage feelings like frustration or sadness, and to find ways to shift out of negative thought cycles. These are skills that can be learned and practiced. The lay abstract puts it really nicely. Building flexibility and emotion management skills through simple everyday supports and caregiver coaching might just help improve mental health and daily life for these individuals. This isn't about fixing them, but about providing tools and support to navigate life's challenges more smoothly. Now, like all research, this study has its limits. They focused on 3 specific executive functions. But executive function is a much bigger picture. Other skills like planning, organizing, or working memory might also play a role and are worth looking into more. Another big limitation is that they relied solely on caregiver reports. While caregivers are invaluable, they can't perfectly capture the internal world or every nuance of an autistic adult's daily experience. Ideally, future research would include the direct voices of autistic adults themselves, alongside caregiver perspectives, and maybe even some hands-on tasks to measure these skills. Combining different ways of measuring things like questionnaires for caregivers, direct reports from the autistic adults, and maybe even some behavioral tasks could give us a much fuller picture. Overall, this research is a really important step forward. It highlights that when we talk about mental health for autistic adults with higher support needs, the spotlight should probably be on flexibility and emotion regulation. By understanding these links better, we can start developing more targeted and effective ways to support their well-being. It's a reminder that understanding how our brains work and how those processes connect to our feelings can have a real impact on improving lives. So, what do you think about these findings? Have you or someone you know experienced challenges with flexibility or emotion regulation impacting mental health? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into the latest psychology research, please give this video a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more breakdowns like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.